Pada tahun 2012, 62 kes penyelesaian pertikaian pelabur negara difailkan tertinggi dalam satu tahun. Antara isu yang dicabar termasuk rangka undang-undang tempatan berkaitan gas, tenaga nuklear dan juga alam sekitar. Pada penghujung 2012, jumlah kes ISDS mencecah 518 dengan jumlah negara terlibat adalah 95. Daripada jumlah 244 kes yang diselesaikan pada 2012, 42% berpihak kepada negara dan 31% berpihak kepada pelabur. 27% diselesaikan di luar mahkamah. 2012 juga, menurut Sidang Pertubuhan Bangsa Bersatu berkenaan dagangan dan pembangunan UNCTAD, menyatakan kes terbesar adalah Occidental Petroleum menentang kerajaan Ecuador. Dalam kes ini, kerajaan Ecuador diarah membayar $1.77 bilion kepada Occidental. Apa kaitan ISDS dengan alam sekitar? Berdasarkan kepada FTA yang dijalankan termasuk dengan Amerika, kebanyakan isu ISDS adalah berkenaan penggunaan bahan kimia berbahaya seperti di Kanada, tanah orang asal dan juga pelombongan di kawasan sensitif alam sekitar. Berdasarkan FTA yang dilakukan Amerika sebelum ini, pelabur dijangka akan diberikan kuasa untuk menyaman negara jika mengganggu dengan pelaburan dan operasi. Untuk melihat kepada ISDS, alam sekitar dan juga TPPA, kita bersama pengasas Presiden EcoKnights, Yasmin Rashid. Hello Yasmin, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Sorry for that long introduction, but I think we have to get it out there on how TPPA, or based on what the FTAs that America has done before this, how will that affect nature and the surroundings and the preservation of nature. Maybe you can share with us the concern right now when it comes to going forth with TPPA, especially when it comes to nature.
Well, I think we're no strangers to the kind of case studies that has happened, like you mentioned, in Ecuador, Peru, in Canada. I think a lot of the previous cases where the investor actually won the case against the government is well documented. And I think the number one fear as environmental organizations or environmentalists that are against the TPPA is the possibility of it happening here or in any of the negotiating countries is very, very real. For one, we are also sacrificing our national environmental policies. I would say our national environmental policies are quite comprehensive. We look at areas like technology transfer, protection of indigenous land rights, and so forth. And I think resonating the other environmental NGOs, the key concern here is it looks like the TPPA may actually reverse all the existing laws that we have in this country. And like you said, it's pro-investor. What is the value of the environment that we are jeopardizing? And that's the number one question that I'm really curious to ask. Are we saying the value of our environment is not as good as development? It's another point that we're all also questioning about the TPPA.
Have you been privy to some of the points that were discussed in the previous negotiations of the TPPA?
Only leaked documents here and there. I've not been to any of the negotiations or any of the stakeholder consultation. But for me, I think the environment would be suffering as a byproduct. It seemed like it because the TPPA is so investor heavy and it's on the business side, without being mindful about the impact we have. And you're talking about Malaysia here, one of the most mega diverse countries, and in terms of values on species and biodiversity is really super high. So per square foot of destruction to the environment actually means a lot more here compared to say in the Arctic, for instance, because they have lower biodiversity.
And also looking at the previous FTAs that America has actually done with other countries, such as Canada, for example, and on how the Canadian government was actually sued because they actually stopped the usage of harmful chemicals when it comes to agriculture. This is a real, this is very realistic when it comes to companies being able to challenge the government in terms of ISDS. Do you foresee this happening in the if the TPPA were to be implemented, or do you think the TPPA would be a different story altogether, seeing how America has said that, oh, it's not an American-centric negotiation. It will be beneficial for every members negotiating in the TPPA.
They may come in different acronyms and names, but I think the effects and the impacts will be very, very similar. So I
the threat is very real.
The threat is very real. If I may quote, with this recent incident with the rare earth plant that we have here, and this is before we embark on a TPPA, because we're not sure whether we're going to sign it yet. And you see how the public pressure was on the company that was processing rare earth here in Pahang. Had it been in a similar situation by post-TPPA, assuming we signed it, there would not be any voice from the public. And any protest from us would probably allow the company to claim a disruption to the manufacturing or processing, and would expose our government to a potential lawsuit. And that's where my concern is. It's almost like, for me, it's almost like reversing the kind of environmental precedents that we have set. And I mean, I'm not saying Malaysia is high up there in terms of environmental governance, but we are heading that way. So with the TPPA, it looked like we're going backwards and not following what are the kind of regulations or legislations we have set up.
The world is going into, is getting very globalized. People are increasing trade with each other, and people are saying that, you know, if Malaysia were to join the TPPA, it would be very beneficial to the country. What alternative to TPPA do you foresee if we were to move forward and make sure that trade happens and also environmental protection happens at the same time?
Oh, that's a tough question, because I don't have a background in economics and so forth. What are the alternatives? I am...
Would you say a regional trade where countries are of the same background?
Or maybe an ASEAN initiated trade agreement that looks at the ASEAN needs and ASEAN region's needs. Alternatively, if we are along the line of sustainable development or sustainability, we've got to look at the long-term impact of our trade, not just on environment, but the well-being of the nation. Is GDP the only factor of success? Or are we looking at the overall, is every Malaysian happy with the air they breathe? Is every Malaysian happy with the water they drink? Is every Malaysian happy with the product that they're buying, So I think the marker of development, the marker of growth, needs to be a little bit more holistic than just looking at trade. We are actually very much sought after Malaysia. We have abundant of natural resources, we have semi-cheap labor, and we have precious amount of land. So, most people who are in the forefront of any trade agreements would definitely look at our country and get us on board. But I really, really hope we're a bit more cautious, we're a bit more careful. I understand we're talking about sovereignty of the country, but putting that aside, we're talking about developing a sustainable country where at some point, if everything is dependent on imports, right? And another crisis happens, what are we going to eat? How are we going to survive? Because everything comes from outside. So we got to look within ourselves. Apart from the trade aspect of it, what is it about the country? In any downturn, in any economic crisis, are we able to sustain ourselves or not? Food-wise, energy-wise, and so forth. So for me, it's not as simple as that. And I just feel a little bit disheartened because, like it or not, the environment will be impacted one way or another.
Okay.
It's just how severe it is. And our environment is not just about the animals and plants. A unique environment is home to a lot of indigenous people. They're people too. So what are we doing to take care of them? And I was talking to you earlier, we've signed the United Nations Declarations of Rights for Indigenous People, UNDRIP, which says we got to protect your land, we got to protect the people. What if an agriculture company comes and say,
You can't do that.
Yeah. So it kind of like bercanggah with what we have signed up for. We've also signed up with the chemical, the Montreal Protocol, all sorts of chemical-based protocols. So what about those international protocols? which we have
That should be
subscribed
override
to.
if we were to sign the TPPA.
It should be.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Yasmin. Yasmin Rashid, pengasas dan juga Presiden EcoKnights, membincangkan tentang isu ISDS alam sekitar dan juga TPPA, dan kita akan teruskan dengan perbincangan ini dalam hari-hari mendatang berkaitan dengan isu TPPA, dan kita akan berhenti berehat seketika, kembali selepas ini.